Number 10. Supreme. Supreme is a character inspired by DC's Superman. Created by Rob Liefeld, the character was originally a part of Image Comics' roster of supers. The great thing about Supreme was that despite being a Superman-esque figure, his series was always somewhat more self-aware, poking fun at some of the typical historical superhero tropes. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to show us you love us by clicking that subscribe button. Seriously, it really does help us out, and also that way you don't miss out on any awesome content that we have. Wah 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 wah. Number 9. Tech Jacket. Tech Jacket is a member of the Guardians of the Globe. He appears in the Invincible series later on from issue 71 through to 78, but actually first appeared in his own spin-off series based in that universe, self-titled Tech Jacket. Tech Jacket is Zach Thompson, a hero who received an alien tech jacket from a dying alien who had crash landed on Earth. That alien's name was Kelda, and they belonged to a physically fragile and weaker race of aliens known as the Geldarians. To compensate, they created the Tech Jacket for every member of the race to wear. The Tech Jacket is a permanent item of clothing that is generally never removed. It grants Zach enhanced speed, strength, stamina, and agility. It can create energy blasts and weapons for the user to wield. It can also create force fields and can clean and provide sustenance to its user as needed. Sounds great. You never need to take it off, I feel like. Number 8. Inferno Girl Red. Inferno Girl Red comes to us from the Massiverse, which is the universe that Radiant Black exists in. Inferno Girl Red, however, is a character that exists in her own series. She is kind of like a magical girl meets like a Power Ranger in terms of her look and her abilities. She comes with a mystical dragon bracelet, which gives her powers, a cool suit, and allows her to transform. She's a pretty new hero and still figuring out her power set, but I know as time goes on she'll only get stronger. We got our first glimpse of her in the first Massiverse crossover comic, and it was there that I became obsessed with wanting to read more about her. If you also feel the pull, she has her own miniseries, which is now collected in its own trade that you can check out. And I don't think it's going to be the last series that she'll have either. I think it's going to be continued, and I would also highly recommend checking it out. Her story is captivating and her character design is one of the best out there. Number 7. Bulletproof. Zandale Randolph, also known as Bulletproof, is a character in the Invincible comic series. He first appeared in issue number 14 as a member of the Guardians of the Globe and later becomes known as Invincible. Zandale joins Mark and Eve's business venture, Invincible Inc., and fills in for Mark as Invincible when he's unavailable. Zandale gains his superpowers after his twin brother Tyrone experiments on him. As Bulletproof, he has superhuman strength and vulnerability and the ability to fly, as well as energy absorption powers. Just because he's not the original Invincible and is not a Viltrumite doesn't mean that he should be underestimated in the comics, or I'm sure in the animated series whenever he shows up there. Number 6. Witchblade. The series Witchblade hails from Top Cow Production, which is an imprint of Image Comics. The series centers around a mystical artifact and the woman who is granted it after it abandons its current host, in order to save her and heal her. This object is known as the Witchblade, the name of which the character and series also share, and this woman, often the main host most people know when it comes to the Witchblade, is Sarah Pizzini, a NYPD homicide detective. The powers granted to her by the Gauntlet are the ability to form weapons and armor using it. Usually very provocative armor, but this is also because using the Witchblade is not easy and Sarah is not as skilled, especially not at the start of her time as Witchblade. The Witchblade also grants Sarah enhanced strength, flight, allows her to shoot energy blasts, and grants her healing factor. Witchblade was created by Mark Silvestri, David Wohl, Brian Haberlin, and Michael Turner. Number 5. Tara. Tara is the daughter of Adam Eve and Invincible. She was born on Earth but would move to Taliscria with her parents. Because she is part Viltrumite, it was believed that she would likely grow up to be even stronger than her father who came before her, as this is usually the way with Viltrumites. They get stronger and stronger through each generation. This means that Tara has the potential to become stronger than both her father, grandfather, and of course anyone that they themselves have seemed capable of beating in battle. She is shown to have the natural superpowers and abilities of your average Viltrumite, but just because we've only seen her beginnings in the Invincible series doesn't mean that you should underestimate Tara. Tara has the potential to be one of the strongest Viltrumites we've ever seen in the pages of Invincible, or the comic to have continued on. Number 4. Radiant Black. While Radiant Black might still be a relatively new superhero character to arrive on the scene at Image Comics, I would still argue it's one of the most fantastic new superhero characters we've had in years, at Image or elsewhere. That's what I'm saying. I know it might be a hot take for people, but this comic is really good. This is why you don't want to underestimate this hero or the staying power of the Massiverse, which he hails from. Radiant Black, both the character and the series, involves a story that, like Invincible, plays with our expectations of what to expect from a hero tale. It has no problem subverting and shattering tropes and works to redefine the genre in an extremely refreshing way. Radiant Black as a character is also still new to superheroes, whether we're talking about Nathan Burnett or Marshall Ward, but what he lacks in experience, he more than makes up for in heart and drive, which often propels him towards victory. That and knowing when to rely on those around him and lean on them for support. Number 3. Robot. Robot might seem like an odd pick for this list, for reasons I can't really discuss without getting into spoilers for those of you that are watching the Invincible animated series, who have yet to read all of the comics. I know the comics are older now, but I still don't want to spoil anything for folks who are like new to this fandom, or who simply, don't read comics. You are still welcome here, friends. That is fine. Robot, as we learn in the animated series and the comics, is piloted by Rudy Connors, whose physical body failed him and was too malformed to function properly. So he built himself a robot body. Following that, he also looks to cloning so that he might have a more functional human form, transferring the consciousness of his original body to the new clone body. There are many reasons you don't want to underestimate Robot or Rudy, but mostly because of his intellect. Number 2. The Darkness. The Darkness is an ancient elemental force that takes up residence in a host, granting them special powers. One of the most famous hosts that we have come to know as the Darkness is Jackie Estacado. The powers that Jackie wields are similar to what you'd expect from some kind of demonic force. They're also honestly comparable to Venom's power set from Marvel Comics, at least I find. The Darkness gives you access to a sort of mystical armor which can be summoned at will. It also grants the user a healing factor, shapeshift abilities, and through them also the ability to fly via wings that he can create. Jackie, as the Darkness, can also create dark tendrils, which he can turn into weapons and can summon entities known as Darklings. While more of an anti-hero due to his brutal methods, Jackie Estacado is still a hero in the sense that he generally fights on the side of good. The Darkness hails from Top Cow Productions, which, like Skybound, is an imprint of Image Comics, as you may already know because we just talked about Witchblade, which is also from Top Cow, so yay. Number 1. Adam Eve. Obviously, one of my all-time favorite comic book superheroes that you should never underestimate is Samantha Eve Wilkins, aka Adam Eve. Or perhaps Atomic Eve if you prefer. I'm not sure where that started, but I feel like I see people calling Adam Eve Atomic Eve everywhere on the internet, and honestly also in person, so let me know if you know where that's from, because I have yet to find the source of that. I wasn't aware of it, but people keep saying it, other than perhaps it just has to do with the fact that Eve's powers allow her to rearrange and completely understand the molecular structure of things. That's right, Adam Eve isn't just a matter manipulating powerhouse, although she is that, but she also understands the science of what she is doing, being gifted in science naturally from a young age as part of her power sets. Just another reason you wouldn't want to mess with her, because she can really understand the best ways to atomically mess a person up. Not a person you want to upset. That's all I'm gonna say. Adam Eve going off. Go watch the Adam Eve special if you haven't done that yet. Treat yourself. That's about it. Number 10. Rubble. Rubble is Horace Benson. He kinda reminds me of another rock-based hero, to be honest, one you might be more familiar with who lives over at Marvel Comics. Yep, the ever-loving blue-eyed thing. Rubble, however, has a much more 90s style to the way he speaks, which makes sense considering that he is in fact a 90s character. He hails from the superhero team and miniseries Bloodpool from Rob Liefeld's Image Comics imprint Extreme Comics. Rubble was genetically engineered to be a superpowered human. Being that his physical body is made of rock, or rubble I guess if you prefer, he is much more durable than others out there and is also known for his strength as well. He also is known by the name Rubble because he can literally dismantle himself and use his body parts as weapons. Think Arm Fall Off Boy from DC Comics, but of course cooler. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd and you love it when we talk about Image, we do have an Invincible playlist, so if you are just craving some more Invincible while we wait for part 2 of the animated series, go check that out. Number 9. Bolt. Bolt is one of the main characters of the Cape series, which hails from the Invincible universe and Image's Skybound imprint. If you don't know Capes Incorporated, it's a pretty cool idea. It's basically like, what if superheroes were superheroes but as a day job? Sort of like instead of police, or in addition to police really, we had an organized superhero unit, or multiple superhero units really. Bolt initially wanted the name Black Samson, but of course it was already taken by the time he came to prominence. When he joined up with Capes, he was told that popular black superheroes typically had names names connected to lightning, which is weirdly true, so he chose Bolt. He also got his powers when he was struck by lightning, so Bolt seems to fit pretty well with his origin as well. He has powers similar to Superman or Omni-Man, though he is likely not nearly as strong. He can fly, has super healing, super strength, super agility, and stamina, and is invulnerable. Number 8. Darok. I don't really know if we consider Darok to be a hero yet. I've only read a few issues of Void Rivals, but what I do know is he is an amazing pilot who managed to put his prejudices aside to work with a member of the Zertonian race, a race he is supposed to hate and that are basically his people's enemies. He used his technical know-how and resourcefulness with the help of his new Zertonian ally to rebuild his ship using a combination of pieces from both his and his allies' alien equipment. He was also gifted, or perhaps cursed, some might say, with a vision about the truth of the origins of his people, the Argorians, and their enemies, the Zertonians. He learned that initially they were one people, which were basically somehow split into two, and must basically once more come together in order to survive or face whatever's coming next. At least, that's what seems to be implied in his vision. Number 7. The Will. The Will is actually one of my favorite characters from a little series called Saga, even though to call him a hero might not be entirely accurate. I don't really know if anyone in the Saga series is really like a straight and narrow cookie cutter hero or superhero, especially for that matter, but at the end of the day, there are honestly many superheroes from both Marvel and DC Comics besides that don't always act so heroic despite their label. So I feel like if we're just gonna acknowledge that heroes aren't perfect, then we could talk about that. The Will, for those who don't know, is a bounty hunter in the Saga series. I am severely behind on Saga in regards to where the story is currently, but I do love what I've read so far in the early parts of the series. The Will is a somewhat heroic figure there. He has a moral code, but he's also a bounty hunter who is willing to, take on a job where he'd have to take out a whole family to get paid. So there's that. He is often accompanied by his ally, the Lion Cat, who can tell when others are being dishonest. Number 6. Alana. Alana starts off as one of the principal characters in the Saga series. She is another of my favorite characters in the series and definitely is one of the most human characters I have ever read. Ergo, to call her, or as I said, anyone in the series a cookie cutter hero would be inaccurate, I think, but at the same time, she definitely exhibits some heroic qualities for sure. She is brave, determined, willing to sacrifice almost anything for her daughter and her family, including her own life, and is often pretty resourceful. Number 5. Commander Capitalism. Okay, we're back to numbers. Interesting, Amanda. Commander Capitalism is another character from Capes, as well as the bonus Cape story at the end of a few issues of Invincible. He's a pretty ridiculous character all in all, but that's also kinda why I love him. Commander Capitalism works at Capes Inc. not just as a superhero, but also as, get this, a personnel manager. He first appears in Capes issue number 1, but he also appears in Capes Part 2, the, like I said, add-on story that is in Invincible issue number 28, where it's revealed that he got with another superhero named Holly, who is immortal, and he got with her apparently because she'll never age physically, but will age mentally, allowing her to keep her looks as she gets older. Yeah, pretty shallow. He also reveals that while the attraction at first was actually more physical, her maturity might also be causing him to actually fall in love with her, which he seems a little embarrassed or perhaps, I guess, surprised about. Commander Capitalism also has more atypical superhero powers, and honestly kinda reminds me of J. Jonah Jameson from Spider-Man in terms of his looks. Number 4. Hip Flask. We're going quite a bit darker than some of the other characters on our list with this one. Hip Flask is the main character of his own self-titled series, and is also a main character in the spin-off series exploring some more of the world he hails from, which is known as Elephant Men. The Elephant Men series and the world it's set in seems to be inspired, or at least bears great similarities in terms of themes, to the book Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, or you might know the adaptation of that, Blade Runner. Here, animal hybrids were forcefully created to basically be mindless super soldiers made to believe since birth that they were simply the property of the Mappo Corporation, who used them to carry out dangerous and deadly missions, basically making them living weapons. After being liberated, the animal hybrid soldiers must now deal with the guilt of what they did and cope with their newfound freedom, which for some is a blessing, but for others is just a curse. But for many is really a combination of the two. Hip Flask is one of the best of the animal hybrid soldiers who, from a young age, sought to ask questions, even while being conditioned not to, and who also normally has a kind and super calm demeanor. Number 3. Ebony. Ebony also hails from the Elephant Men series. Also known as Ebenezer Hyde, he is the ally of Hip Flask, working alongside him in the information agency. He often has flashbacks to the times when he was a mindless killing machine owned and deployed by Mappo. Mappo, and as a result deals with severe depression. Tragically, he also ends up being recaptured by Mappo later on after they activate a sleeper chip in his brain. Number 2. Knockout. Knockout is another member of Capes Inc. She makes her first appearance in issue number 1 of Capes, where Kid Thor, who is getting a tour of the facility from Bolt on his first day there, spots her in the gym while she is in the midst of a workout. He seems to be enamored by her beauty and her fighting prowess, but what he doesn't know at the time is that she is training with boxing gloves when he sees her, which she actually needs to be wearing boxing gloves to even use her powers. Knockout has super agility, stamina, and strength when using her boxing gloves, and she and Kid Thor actually do later end up married in the Invincible universe. Knockout also goes on to become a Guardian of the Globe as well. Number 1. Salila. I have a feeling this could end up as a romance story between these two characters from Void Rivals. We're talking about the other main character from Void Rivals, Salila. Salila is also still pretty new to me. As I said before, I've only read like a few issues of Void Rivals at this point, but what I do know of her is that she is definitely brave, strong, and honestly has some badass fighting prowess. She also has some tech know-how as she assists Darok in repairing his ship using pieces from both their own and from, of course, both of their own equipment, as I said earlier. When they are taken captive / somewhat rescued from the desolate emptiness of space in issue number 2, she is the one who offers to head out in front, prepared to do battle with whoever has taken in their ship, which when I saw, honestly, I was amazed by. I was like, oh okay, this is Salila. And at the beginning of issue 3, she proves that she is definitely more than just a pilot. Number 10. The Vicious Circle. They might not be as great of a threat in terms of the area that they cover, but the Vicious Circle still stands as the main antagonist for the long-running Savage Dragon series, first standing as opponents to the Dragon, Kerr Dragon, and later to the Dragon, Malcolm Dragon, Kerr's son. While Chicago has been known for its criminal gangs and mob bosses since back in the Prohibition days, the Vicious Circle would become the leading crime group in the area. That's how powerful they were. The Vicious Circle was originally led by Antonio Seghetti, known as the First Overlord, who began recruiting mutated freaks into his ranks after they started popping up in Chicago in the 90s. Over the years, the leadership of the Vicious Circle and its members have changed, but their reign over Chicago as the major crime syndicate has stayed. Number 9. Anissa. Anissa is one of the worst in Invincible, although she, like so many villains out there in the series, ends up getting somewhat of a redemption. Anissa is not only a powerful villain because she is a Viltrumite, the same race which Mark is half a part of, and which his dad Nolan is fully a part of, but because of what she uses her powers for. Anissa first arrives on Earth attempting to reason with Invincible in regards to the Viltrumites conquering Earth. When Mark refuses to accept this, she fights him and warns him that others are coming. Basically, the conquering of Earth in Anissa's mind can be done the easy way or it can be done the hard way. Either way, to her it was happening at that point. Later on, when it's agreed that the Viltrumites will take up residence on Earth and live in secret among their people, breeding to create more hybrid children, Anissa forces herself on Mark when he refuses her romantic advances. Basically, Anissa is the worst of the worst. And friends, if you're not already following us over on Facebook, be sure to head on over, give us a follow, give us a like, it really does help us out here at the channel. Number 8. Malbolgia. Malbolgia is the demon who most people think of when they think of Spawn. He made the deal with Malbolgia so that he might see his wife one last time, but arrived on Earth years after his death. Malbolgia might only be one of the higher demons of hell, but for a time he also stood in for Satan as its ruler, which at the time made him pretty powerful and would also mean he is one of Satan's more highly favored commanders. Urizen could even be more powerful than Malbolgia for all we know. When we think of Spawn, our usual go-to nemesis for the anti-hero is Malbolgia, but when it comes to a villain even that iconic or great, there is someone else puppeteering even beyond what Malbolgia is capable of. Number 7. Omni-Man. Omni-Man is a complex character in the Invincible universe. He is both a hero and a villain, and sometimes is like more of an anti-hero. He's done it all, really. He is the father to Mark Grayson, the protagonist of the story, known as the hero Invincible. While there are times he has fought against Mark, he's also fought beside Mark as well. In season 1 of the animated series, based on the Invincible comic book series, Omni-Man takes on and defeats single-handedly the Guardians of the Globe. Although he initially told his son that he and his race of superpowered beings, the Viltrumites, were heroes who traveled the universe finding worlds to protect, it is later revealed that this was actually a lie. Instead, the Viltrumites are people who travel the universe looking for worlds to conquer, which was also Omni-Man aka Nolan Grayson's objective here on Earth. The people of Earth can either surrender and live under Viltrumite rule, or resist and basically be destroyed. Later on in the comic series, however, Omni-Man would go on to become the new Emperor of Viltrum and use his power and influence to protect the people of Earth against other Viltrumites, who would seek, of course, to harm it. Number 6. Emperor Kerr. Emperor Kerr is actually none other than Savage Dragon, but is actually him in the past. He isn't Malcolm Dragon, but instead is Kerr Dragon, known originally as the Dragon, who first appeared in the first issue of the 1992 Savage Dragon miniseries, so the original Savage Dragon. When it comes to Kerr's origins, for years it was pretty much unknown. We simply knew him as the Dragon, with his powers and appearance being widely unexplained. He was found in a burning field in Chicago without his memories, suffering from amnesia. However, finally years later in 2005, we'd learned who this dragon really was. Despite being a hero in the narrative, it turned out that originally when Kerr Dragon came to Earth, he was a great villain, known as Emperor Kerr. He and a group of aliens from his race were traveling in space seeking a new home. Kerr liked the idea of Earth and, despite his people's more peaceful ways usually, decided to raise the planet and conquer it, planning to kill all humans on it. Two scientists intervened in this plot, wiping Kerr's memories and swapping them out for 5 days worth of TV broadcasts from Earth. Emperor Kerr would later regain his original memory and once more threaten all the humans of Earth. I love that. I love that, like, you can be the major hero of a series and then it's just like, whoop, actually maybe you were a villain the whole time, but you didn't know because you had amnesia. Number 5. Throg. Throg is one of the most powerful villains from the Invincible series. Like Omni-Man aka Nolan Grayson aka the father of Mark Grayson, also known as Invincible, Throg is a Viltrumite. And we still don't really know, I don't think, if it's Throg or Throg? I'm not sure if it's like ah or ah, but we're still waiting for this character to appear in the animated series, which will hopefully tell us which way we should be saying it. Still waiting for that season 2. Come on, season 2, let's go. For now though, I'm going with Throg. I'm gonna go with the ah instead of the ah. Does that make sense to you guys? Do you hear a difference when I'm saying it? Throg or Throg? Do you hear it? It's totally different, but I'm gonna go with Throg. Throg is known for being the most powerful Viltrumite around. He was once the Grand Regent of Viltrum, entrusted with finding a successor after the Emperor's death. Really though, Throg wanted to rule. When it was revealed that Omni-Man was the son of the previous Emperor and his successor, Throg fought him, but Omni-Man with some help managed to defeat Throg. Still, this didn't stop the vengeful Viltrumite, who spent his time amassing an army of half Viltrumite offspring, hoping to use them in reclaiming what he believed to be his rightful place as ruler of Viltrum. Number 4. Urizen. Urizen could be even more powerful than Malbolgia for all we know. Urizen also hails from Image Comics' Spawn and even defeated the hero after his escape. Urizen is believed to be older than Satan and Time, one of the oldest demons to have ever existed. He's believed to be so destructive because even Heaven and Hell actually came together in order to ensure Urizen's imprisonment, and Heaven and Hell rarely cooperate in the Spawn universe, considering they both hate the other and basically want them gone. It's also theorized that the only way to defeat Urizen is to imprison them, as they are possibly unkillable. Spawn was only able to defeat Urizen after being killed by them and resurrected with the Green World, which gave Spawn enough power to once more imprison Urizen. Number 3. Gorl the Living Galaxy. Gorl the Living Galaxy is a villain who hails from Image Comics. He is a villain to Supreme, who is an Image character who has also been published by Maximum Press, Awesome Entertainment, and Arcade Comics along the way. So Image, but also sometimes not Image depending on when you were reading it. Supreme made his first appearance in Image Comics Youngblood in issue number 1 in 1992. Gorl the Living Galaxy was a villain of Supreme's who at one point kidnaps his superpowered sister Suprema. Gorl threatens to destroy the Milky Way if she refuses to join him and become his bride. Suprema agrees and comes with the Living Galaxy, and because time works differently in his home at the edge of a black hole, 30 years would seem to pass for Suprema before Supreme came to her rescue, although that's just because time moves like really quickly there. Despite Supreme's powers, he's basically like Superman, even he decided the best way to resolve the issue would actually be to reason with Gorl and simply convince the Living Galaxy that Suprema wasn't really a suitable mate for him, which actually worked in the end. But you know someone's tough when you're like, let's not fight, let's just have a conversation about this. I don't know if I can beat a Living Galaxy, although I don't know, I believe in Supreme. If he needed to beat a Living Galaxy, probably could. Number 2. Satan. When we think of Spawn, our usual go-to nemesis for the anti-hero is Malbolgia. But when it comes to a villain even that iconic or great, there is someone else puppeteering even beyond what Malbolgia is capable of. That would be Satan. Satan is so powerful, almost none can stand against him, especially when he is in his own dimension of hell. Satan is presented as possessing nigh omnipotence and also is omniscient. He's invulnerable, immortal, and packs a super meaty punch. He also has the power of having all of hell as his kingdom, where he is the ruler, meaning that he often doesn't stand alone and comes with a bunch of other demonic beings who will do his bidding when commanded. Number 1. Omega Spawn. Omega Spawn is a villain even more powerful than Satan, if you can believe that. And I know what you might be thinking, but wait a minute, Amanda, isn't Spawn supposed to be a hero in this world? Yes, he is, but also not so much in this case. This Spawn is an alternate version of Al Simmons who no longer possessed any of his humanity. This made the version of the character pretty bad. At one point, he kills everyone on Earth so he can use their souls to destroy heaven. He is also one of the few characters who is shown to be powerful enough to usurp Satan, being given the reign of hell by Satan himself. Satan was also the one to basically take away his last remnants of humanity so that Omega Spawn might become the weapon they needed to defeat heaven. However, this plan backfired somewhat. Omega Spawn would defeat heaven but would also destroy Satan as well. Initially, Omega Spawn was believed to be non-canon, being from an alternate reality where his narrative was never even really finished. However, as the multiverse opened up in the Spawn world and alternate versions of Spawn came together, Omega Spawn was revealed to be the big bad of all those multiversal spawns. So he does exist now in the main canon, and also he's super evil. Brutality is something that we are no stranger to in the comic book medium, but some fights are more brutal than others, and Image Comics have some of the most brutal ones around amidst their various indie series. There are honestly so many great fights to pick from when it comes to Image Comics, so many series that have so many brutal beatdowns, but I think one of my all-time favorite series for iconic and memorable frays, especially brutal ones, has to be Invincible. What makes these fights stand out isn't just the brutality, but the emotional connection you have to these characters involved, which honestly makes them not just physically brutal, but honestly emotionally brutal as well. Take for example the fighting between Conquest and Invincible. Conquest arrived at a time when Mark was going through some pretty intense stuff, so he was ready to let go and punch something as hard as he could. However, this is Conquest we're talking about, so even when Adam Eve flew in to act as backup, this fight ended up becoming quite messy. Like many fights in Invincible, this one spanned multiple issues, being wrapped up in issue number 65 after coming to a very gruesome end in issue number 64. Speaking of gruesome, let's turn to something that is also very gruesome. Is it more gruesome? I guess in some parts it kind of is actually. We're talking about Walking Dead. Honestly, reading this fight just made my jaw literally drop. Now granted, I'm not as well versed in the Walking Dead series, so anytime I come to this comic and read a few issues, I'm always pretty much shocked by what I read here. It's a lot of a lot. And this instance of course was no different. In fact, it is probably a beatdown that'll stay with me for some time. In this fight, Rick takes on a group of marauders, unlike in the Walking Dead show where this group is actually more specific, a group we've become familiar with who are known as the Claimers. In the comic, they're just kind of like a random group, I believe, of awful survivors. In the comics, Rick also only has one hand at this point, so keep that in mind, having lost it to the governor. But even with him having both hands in the show at this point, they made the ending to this fight the same, and both endings are brutal. With Rick in a bind, his arms restricted at his sides, he's asked, "What are you going to do now?" He responds by biting the man's neck zombie style. Yeah. Also, I just love how so many of the images from the show and the comic in this fight, like when I went back to watch the scene, are like one for one from the panels. It's pretty awesome. Up next, Marco and Alana are the two main characters from the Saga series. At least, they are at the start. The series begins with them both in the middle of delivering their first child while also being hunted down for having said child together. And while they do get away initially, they eventually are hunted down by the military before they're able to safely leave the planet. As such, they're forced to fight and defend their new little family unit. Alana is a deserter who takes no issue with fighting back, but Marco actually swore to be a pacifist since his daughter was born, but something in him snaps when he sees his family in danger. He reverts to a version of himself probably not yet seen since his own time in the war, brutally fighting the attackers. Fortunately, Alana is able to rein him in and calm him down, reminding him of his pacifist oath. This next one is honestly one of the most surprising brutal beatdowns I have ever read. This one also comes from Saga. I love Saga, in case you didn't know. I'm not up to date on it by any means, but everything that I've read so far in this series I've been obsessed with, and I really do want to get up to date. I just need to read a lot of things. There's a lot of issues. It's just such a great series overall though, so it really is worth the time. If you haven't checked it out, I do highly recommend just getting even that first volume and giving it a read. It'll hook you. Just the first few issues should be enough to just blow your mind. This brutal beatdown is also from near the beginning of the story as well. The Will is a bounty hunter. He has also been given the contract to hunt down Alana and Marco, but kinda early on he decides he might give up on the contract. Feeling he's already been beaten, he decides to use his unlimited credit card that he was given for the job to basically entertain himself. But while pursuing this entertainment, he runs into a really bad guy. Now most characters in Saga are very grayscale when it comes to their alignment, both capable of good and bad deeds. The Will honestly included. He's kind of terrible, but also he's got some pros. But I think we can all agree that this guy, the one he's up against, is like the actual worst. He's very bad. Needless to say, the Will surprised me by making very quick work of him. Discombobulate, bringing it to a new level. I don't even know if you can show it, that's how brutal it is. But basically, it's giving him one of these, the head squeeze. Moving on, the Whispering War is something we saw happen in both the comics of Walking Dead and the show. The show depicted the war a bit differently from the comics. There it was more like a literal war with armies on each side, and one side hunting down and eradicating the other in the end to win. Moving right along, Urizen is basically one of the worst of the worst of the worst when it comes to Spawn comics. He's a powerful villain and a mortal god who was basically imprisoned on Earth by the combined forces of heaven and hell. Yeah, that's how bad he is. Heaven and hell were willing to work together to take him down. However, Urizen was eventually freed from his prison and escaped. This was a world-ending scenario, not just because of Urizen's own power, but because his being unleashed was part of a plan crafted by Malbolgia to spark Armageddon on Earth. When Spawn first fought Urizen, it didn't go well, to say the least, which is why when he returned empowered by the ruler of Greenworld, Gaia herself, Earth, the beatdown felt pretty cathartic. If Spawn versus Urizen was cathartic, this next point was heart-wrenching. One of the most heartfelt fights you probably weren't expecting is the one that happens between Throg or Thrag, I'm still not sure how we're gonna say that, I'm waiting to hear it, in the animated series, and Omni-Man. These two fought during issue 138 of Invincible in a rematch. After Throg had been banished, he created his own hybrid child army by teaming up with the Thraxans. He had a lot of kids while he was away, and when he returned he sicked his offspring on Earth and took his own fight directly to Nolan. You might wonder how or why we'd ever feel bad for what happens to Omni-Man here if you're a fan of the animated series, but trust me when I say that Omni-Man is way more complex than you might otherwise think. Well, season 1, and I would say kinda still the first half of season 2, even paints him as like a pretty antagonistic and kinda like shady dude. There is definitely more to him than that. And at the end of the day, he's still Mark's dad. While the two have had their issues, Mark honestly does love him. Even when he's being a jerk, he loves him. Even when he's in denial, he does love him. And at this point in the comics, he was more redeemed than we've seen him before, which is why it was heartbreaking when we watched Nolan be brutally defeated by Throg, who not only put his fist through Nolan's chest, aiming for his heart, but then, when he missed, he just tore Nolan open. Terrible. Switching over to a different comic series with this next point, Spawn and Zera are opposites. While Spawn is one of the most powerful beings in hell, especially after Malbolgia is defeated, Zera is God's most prized warrior. She was an angel whom God granted immortality to so she can never die. At a time in Spawn when the war between heaven and hell was very dangerously present on Earth, these two meet up, and Spawn, basically being God tier at that time, makes quick work of Zera, slicing her in half. What's even more brutal is that Zera would survive this fight, but only as like a disembodied head due to her immortality. Cause yeah, she can't die, which in that way kind of becomes a curse when you're just a head. Spawn might be brutal, but there is another series that I think of first when it comes to beatdowns. I talked about it at the beginning of the list, you know where I'm going. I wish I could limit how much I talk about Invincible, but truly it's challenging. I just love it so much. The series is just so good, and it honestly is some of the most brutal beatdowns in comic book history. So yeah, we're going back there again. I'm gonna talk about it again. This fight is now one that many know about thanks to the Invincible animated series. As Omni-Man's true motivations are revealed to Mark, the two come to blows, and while Invincible is reluctant reluctant to fight against his father, Omni-Man is less inclined to hold back, honestly. This fight was so brutal, it quickly became one of the most iconic and most memeable ones ever. Seriously, it's between Invincible and Omni-Man for me, and Anakin and Obi-Wan in terms of like equally memeable and memorable brutal fights. Both of those are very memeable, I think. Next up, this has to be one of the most brutal fights within Image and within honestly all of comics. It spanned 5 issues and multiple days, with the series popping back to just remind you each issue, yeah, that's still going on. Those two are still fighting. I can't even give you one issue to read because that simply just doesn't exist. As it unfolds, it gets more and more brutal and gruesome. This is mainly because this fight goes down between Throg and Battle Beast. These two fight because Battle Beast has decided to team up with the coalition of planets and is sent to defeat Throg. But what he's truly after is not necessarily to complete his mission, but to die a warrior's death here. He sees Throg as his equal or possibly his superior when it comes to battle, and hopes to die at his hands, or defeat one of the few who has actually managed to stand against him. To give you an example of just how intense this fight is, in the beginning, Throg is badly wounded when Ragnars are also unleashed from Battle Beast's ship at the start of their fight. Battle Beast was told that the Ragnars wouldn't be unleashed except as a last resort, and if you don't know this, Ragnars are basically some of the ultimate enemies against Viltrumites because they can actually break their skin. One of the few beings in the cosmos who can break a Viltrumite's skin, to be clear. After defeating the Ragnars, Battle Beast notices Throg's wound and injures himself to match to once again ensure this fight is fair. So not only does Battle Beast turn on the Ragnars, but then he also is like, oh, you're wounded? Me too. Now we fight again. And then they fight for days.
Starting off at number 10 is Glenn. Kicking off this list today with one that hits close to home for most people. In both the TV show and the comic books, the former pizza delivery boy turned zombie fighter and scout, Glenn, was the one person in the group that believed there could be a future for them all, and he was easily one of people's most favorite characters, which unfortunately in this world means that he probably won't be around for too long. The worst part is that you have so much faith in this character and his future in the story. Maggie was pregnant with his child, and they were going to start a family as they wanted to rebuild society. Fortunately, the group leader Rick Grimes and his friends crossed a guy by the name of Negan, who led a group called, ironically, the Saviors. The group unwittingly incurred his wrath by taking out a lot of the Saviors that attacked the group. Since Rick had taken the lives of Negan's men, Negan came back in full force to get his revenge. But lining up the group of survivors, Negan made his choice at random. It was one of the most tense moments in the comic, and when he finally chose Glenn, bashing his head in with Lucille in front of his wife and friends, he not only proved that anyone in this world could die, but he proved that a comic book can make me cry and want to throw up all at the same time. Number 9, Nemesis. Now look, I'm not gonna say that Nemesis is a great comic book. It's disliked by a lot of people because it basically just relies on its shock and brutality factor, but gives a main character that isn't really likable at all and has a pretty lame plot. But it does rely on the brutality, which means yes, there are some horrible ways to pass into the afterlife presented here. Now disclaimer, the original was not published by Image Comics, so I won't be talking about that one. Instead, we will focus on Nemesis Reloaded, which was published by Image Comics. Anyways, in issue 3 of the Image comic, Nemesis tricks his way onto a police boat with a very specific officer on board. This officer was responsible for the arrest of Nemesis' parents. While they probably did deserve to be arrested because they were criminals, they also lost their lives, and for that, Nemesis wants revenge. So, after knocking out the officer, he comes back to find the boat is now sinking. Nemesis explains who he is and why this is happening, and then he waits as the boat sinks, and then is picked up by his henchmen. All the while, the officer sinks to his watery grave. No thank you. I'm good. I don't like that. Number 8, Headbutt. The oldest Viltrumites are usually the most powerful of the bunch. One old-timer Viltrumite goes by the name of Conquest, and he is one grizzled old man, battle-scarred with a cybernetic arm and breath that smells like feet. He arrives on Earth to check on Mark's progress with taking over the planet after the Invincible War, so it's safe to say Mark is not in the best mood. But Conquest does not care, and these two have an absolute slog of a battle over the course of 4 issues of the comic. Conquest takes a few hits, but Mark is no match for this guy in the slightest. In an attempt to help Invincible, his girl, Adam Eve, decides to show up on the battlefield and lend a hand. She was far out of her league, and Conquest punched a hole right through her. Actually, he didn't punch, he went like that. I don't know what to call that. That was a line for Mark though, and it sends him into a frenzy. The two Superman-like beings fly straight at one another, and Mark punches straight through Conquest's cybernetic arm, breaking his own arm in the process. He uses his unbroken hand to clock the old man across the face. He bites a massive chunk out of the guy's shoulder. Adam Eve, out of nowhere, revives herself and lends a helpful blast, and then when Conquest breaks Mark's other hand, Invincible uses his head and headbutts Conquest over and over and over and over and over again until what was once an old grizzled Viltrumite's face is now just ground beef. Number 7. Completely obliterated. If you haven't heard of Image Comics' new series Vanish, allow me to introduce you. Vanish? Nerds. Now you've met. Vanish follows Oliver Harrison. This chosen one peaked at the age of 14 when he took down the leader of the biggest threat to his universe in a mystical place called the Everkeep. Now, as an adult, this chosen one indulges in every vice he can, living a mediocre, sloppy life. Until a group of heroes show up called the Prestige, who are actually the followers of the threat that Oliver took down as a child. The leader of this group of heroes is called Halcyon, and just like the rest, he isn't what he actually seems. Trying to get to Oliver, Halcyon goes after Oliver's ex-best friend, another magic user by the name of Deacon Dust. But Deacon is loyal and refuses to give in to Halcyon no matter how much pain the hero inflicts on him. After launching a bloody ball of spit in Halcyon's face, Deacon is subsequently obliterated in an explosion of guts, innards, and 2 eyeballs. This is only issue 4, so I for one hope we get to see Deacon again, but after that, I don't think there's much chance. Number 6. Bit by a walker. In the world of Robert Kirkman's The Walking Dead, other people are the most dangerous foe one can encounter. People with selfish motivations and with no kind of law and order to keep them in check will do the absolute worst things, but the whole reason that is the case in this story is because the rest of the world have been turned into a horde of undead. So many characters fall to the undead in these comics, and not a single one of those untimely demises looks like they'd be particularly great. For starters, you're having chunks ripped out of you by a walking corpse. That is terrifying. But in most cases, the walkers don't travel solo, which means that more often than not, you're being completely swarmed and torn apart by an entire herd of the Walking Dead. So that's all bad enough, but what if you get bit but manage to escape? Well, now you have to slowly and agonizingly succumb to the zombie infection, turning you into one of the undead and potentially forcing you to turn on your own friends. That's assuming you or one of your closest friends isn't around to put you out of your misery. There is a reason The Walking Dead caused the collapse of society in this Image Comics series. It's because they're scary. Number 5. Thrag vs. Battle Beast. The incredibly powerful and barbarian-like alien known as Thok, aka Battle Beast, fights for the good guys or the bad guys, as long as it serves his goal to find his equal and better in combat so that they can bring the end of his life in an honorable battle. Honor is the key part here. During his fight against Thrag, the unfathomably strong leader of the Viltrumites, Thok recognizes Thrag's strength and the two go at it. Now, the Coalition of Worlds organized the use of Ragnars, which are one of the only species of aliens who have proven strong enough to take down Viltrumites. Battle Beast was told that they would only be released if he failed to take down Thrag, so when they were released at the start of the battle and gave Thrag a massive wound, Battle Beast was actually incredibly peed, and he decided to stop fighting Thrag and instead help him defeat the Ragnars so that they could have a fair fight, which Thrag even remarks was a stupid thing to do. But not only did he take away his own advantage, but he even injured himself across the abdomen in the same way that Thrag had been injured, just so he wouldn't have any unfair advantages. These two absolute monsters fought for days until Thrag got the upper hand and crushed the heart of Thok after the honorable warrior thanked Thrag for the fight of his life. Literally. Number 4. Duel on the Sun. But since I hate Thrag for taking the life of Battle Beast and for being a Freddie Mercury clone, let's talk about how his life came to a close. In the climactic battle between Mark Grayson, Invincible, and Thrag, who had been one of the primary antagonists through the series, Invincible had taken their fight to the very surface of the sun itself. These guys are so powerful that their fight actually goes on for some time, but once Mark forces the two of them into the sun, things really start to heat up. Pun intended. These two keep up their fight even as they're both burning and melting, breaking bones and taking chunks out of each other. The problem for Thrag is that Mark has allies. Thrag has no one. His only motivation is strength, and in the end, that strength failed him when Mark got help from one of Robot's suits that gave him just a few extra minutes of survival on the sun's surface. The slogfest finally came to an end when Mark took a bite out of Thrag's neck, leaving him to burn to nothingness on the sun while Mark was saved by Alan the alien. Number 3. Head Smushed. Saga is an awesome comic book out of Image Comics, and I just started reading it last week, and it's quickly becoming a favorite. In the comic, there are bounty hunters, mercenary types called freelancers. One of these freelancers goes by the name The Will, and he is hired to bring down the main characters for supposed crimes that they committed, the crime of being in love and making a baby together. But that's not important. The Will takes a trip to a lovely little place called Sextillion. If you didn't infer from the name of this place, it's essentially a whole colony in space that seems to have one purpose: pleasure. Oh, fair warning, this comic is not for kids. I should probably say that. Speaking of that though, the Will gets picked up by a groomer. Basically a guy who is in charge of a handful of women and the one who kind of runs the organization. Well, he introduces the Will to one of the girls that he thinks the Will be interested in. For some very obvious reasons, the Will is not interested in this girl and is actually incredibly angry that this girl is even being used like this. So, the Will introduces this groomer's head to the insides of his hands and completely destroys it. Gone in a flash. Good riddance, bye. Number 2, Crucified. I bet you were worried Spawn wasn't gonna make this list, didn't you? I wouldn't do that to you guys. Come on. In Spawn number 27, we learn of Philip Cran, who has spent his life studying the occult so that one day he could gain access to heaven. Pretty sure that's not how it works, but hey. Calling himself the Curse, very cool, Philip decided the best thing to do in his heavenly endeavor would be to bring down the Hellspawn Al Simmons. Spawn was an agent of heaven at that point though, and was imbued with mystical energy, which Philip would then siphon off for himself. Because he is clearly no match for Spawn, Philip goes with a complete sneak attack on Simmons, blowing a hole clear through Spawn's chest. Unsurprisingly, Spawn wasn't especially pleased about being ambushed and made holy by this psycho. See what I did there? It was good. So he tracks down the Curse and blasts off his bionic arm. The two engage in a battle that began and ended pretty quickly though. Since Spawn was at full power and the Curse was just a crazy guy in a costume, he didn't last that long at all. Spawn beat the absolute beans out of the Curse and then strung up his almost lifeless body against a wall in an alley to warn off any further enemies. That would have resulted in Philip's passing, but his fate was actually even worse later on. But we're not going to talk about it. Number 1, Paul. Now that was pretty bad, but let's fast forward all the way to Spawn issue number 322. Essentially, there was this vampire named Paul, and he had taken a girl and had been keeping her in his house for years, where he would not only drain her, but do anything he wanted. Now look, Spawn is from hell, but there are some lines you just don't cross. Spawn's anger and rage at this guy seems to make him even more powerful, to the point that none of Paul's attempts to stop the Hellspawn even faze him a little bit, and he quickly incapacitates the vampire using a horrifying amount of bugs, but not before he tells Paul to say Monday. When Paul comes back to, he is chained up and Spawn makes him say Friday. Kinda weird, but that's because it has been 5 days since the vampire last fed. On top of that, Spawn had made some roaches go inside Paul and eat away at anything his body produced to help with his hunger, so this guy is starving. Spawn lets a mouse go free down a skinny little hallway and informs Paul that there is even more blood for him at the end of the hallway, and he can either go down that or stay where he is and be consumed by the roaches. Naturally, Paul chooses the hallway, but you see, Spawn had removed all the spikes from his costume and instead put them on either side of said hallway, so Paul has to basically be torn to pieces as he makes his way through, with the bugs chasing after every drop of Paul's blood that hits the ground. But he does it, and when he finally gets through, Spawn is there with Paul's mistreated dogs, who have also not eaten in 5 days. Spawn gives Paul the key to the exit, which is back on the other end of the hallway, so Paul is forced to go back through, pursued by ravenous dogs on one side and blood and flesh consuming insects on the other. Needless to say, Paul doesn't make it through. Coming in at number 10, it's the medic. This one came out of nowhere, for me at least. In the opening moments of issue 12 of Saga, we are on a battlefield between the wings and the horns, with Prince Robot IV, who was just taken a hit, and a medic is called over. A medic who basically looks like an anthropomorphic mouse. That doesn't really matter. Basically, the medic saves Prince Robot and tells him about how he supports the wings since they saved his home planet, and how he's serving as a medic to get his degree. Nice. When all of a sudden some gas-like spell is used by the enemy, which seems to be against the rules of engagement. While everyone else puts on their gas masks, it turns out the medic wasn't ever given one. This medic looks around in a panic, realizing and asking if he is going to pass away, and within moments he puffs up and gets all deformed, and then he just straight up pops in an explosion of gore. Sad.
Number 9. Mermaids. To some, this might actually sound like a pleasant way to go, because I mean, mermaids. But to those who know mermaids from the pages of Black Cloak, not so much. The mermaids in this world are known for being deadly and dangerous beasts, although some do more think of them as misunderstood, which honestly there's kind of some points to that, but I digress. Mermaids here tend to, eat their victims. I don't know about you, but for me the thought of being devoured alive or even attacked underwater is horrifying. Add in the fact that when mermaids get angry or hungry they look like this, and yeah, I would not want to meet my end this way. Although I will say at least you seem to get to experience a sense of euphoria before you die, as their song, or rather their speech, tends to hypnotize you and make you kind of hallucinate that everything is light and beautiful and great. Although in a way, that actually might make your death even more horrific here when you think about it.
Coming in at number 8, it's the blood transfusion. Phil Dirt was one of Savage Dragon's first friends when he joined the Chicago Police Department, and he also developed a crush on the hero. His homosexuality was something that made Phil's partner on the force, Howard Neisman, uncomfortable. Howard was pretty bigoted, but despite that, they still would put their personal differences aside and were loyal to one another as police officers and partners. This loyalty was shown when Phil was mauled by the shark man known as Mako, who took a big chunk out of the guy. If that wasn't bad enough, Phil also discovered that he was infected with AIDS, and he asked Howard for help. Howard went to Dragon asking him to give a blood transfusion to Phil to try and save his life. The transfusion cured Phil and even regenerated the wounds that he received, but it also mutated Phil, and Dragon felt something might possibly go wrong, and unfortunately, he was right. The unstable nature of Dragon's blood caused Phil to eventually explode during the ride to the hospital, covering Howard and his truck with anything that may have been inside. Poor old Phil here.
Number 7. Down with the ship. I don't know how the captain really ended up expiring in the first issue of The Forged. There's a lot here that we don't quite fully understand yet because, you know, it's the first issue. But that's part of the fun with this story. This world that we enter in this action-packed, bug-stomping, gritty, futuristic space adventure is vast, as is highlighted by the pages of text at the end, expanding upon some of the lore that's hinted at in the issue, touching on the politics, as well as literally mapping out the empire that we are thrown into here. What I do know is that however the captain went, I wouldn't want to go that way. In this first issue of The Forged, we are introduced to an elite team of fighters who are part of a crew type known for getting the impossible done. This kind of crew is known as the Forged. They are sent on a suspiciously simple mission to retrieve a black box from an abandoned wreck on a distant and deadly world. However, before they're deployed, a space witch known as a Cassandra in this series aboard the massive ship seems to be interested in tweaking some of the mission's parameters and conditions. As soon as they deploy, she heads to the bridge to, I don't know, transform and kill everyone? That seems like what's happening here. I'm not really sure what's happening here, but it does not look good as the entire massive ship crashes down towards the planet that our Forged are deployed to. Also, I think there's like 90,000 people on that ship, so that's pretty crazy. Is this woman a Cassandra? Is she something else? What's happening here? I don't know, but it's awful.
Coming in at number 6, it's Billy Kincaid. Billy Kincaid, first introduced in issue 5 of the Spawn comic book series, is an incredibly deranged and disgusting killer. Originally sentenced to 22 years in prison for taking the life of someone way too young, his good behavior coupled with his attorney and a ridiculous positive psychiatric evaluation saw Kincaid gain early parole after only 6 years. Now, before his passing and return as Spawn, Al Simmons had been hired as an assassin to take out Kincaid. However, he arrived just as the cops had caught this man. Al learned that Kincaid's real victim count is all the way up at 27, but with no solid evidence and someone covering Kincaid's tracks, he was never caught for those crimes. Now, 6 years later and out of prison, Billy Kincaid went right back to his old habits. Picking up his occupation as Mr. Chill E, the ice cream man, he ends up taking the life of another innocent soul. Spawn, finding out Kincaid has been freed, is able to track Kincaid down, and the next time we see Billy, he is chained up in Detective Sam Burke's office, impaled with popsicle sticks and an ice cream scoop with a popsicle shoved in his no longer moving mouth. A note Spawn apparently attached to this body reads, "Boys scream and girls screamed, so I made him scream and scream and scream," and that is horrifying, but good riddance.
Number 5, cut short. I don't know how else to describe for the title here for this point that it would be allowed on this platform. So we're just going to take inspiration straight from the issue where the creep narrates asking, "Scared of what, Nate? Your sentence was cut short. Just like your life." I don't know if that's what this creep probably does not sound like that. This demise comes to us from issue number 1 of Creep Show, and the first story within it, take 1. This is like the first few pages, friends, of this issue. Nate is one of the hooligans we meet who, with his friends or his, I don't know, honestly they seem like a group of little criminals, ventures to take more than one candy from a bowl placed out on Halloween, seemingly by a dead man, Mr. Xander. Well, it turns out that for a corpse, Mr. Xander is actually pretty lively, and he doesn't take too well to people taking more than their fair share of candy. He rushes Nate and his friend from behind, pushing Nate's face into the sewer grate and stomps on him.
Number 4, the Governor. The Governor is not someone that you find yourself caring for. Honestly, he is really the first major human antagonist that the group faces in The Walking Dead. Leading his own group or community called Woodbury, at first the Governor seems like a decent dude for about 5 minutes before he threatens to feed Rick, Glenn, and Michonne to walkers and then cuts off Rick's hand. He ends up keeping the 3 captive and treating Michonne the worst of the bunch. When she finally escapes, she comes back for some pretty serious revenge. After knocking Mr. Governor unconscious, Michonne strips him down to his skivvies, drills through his shoulder blades, does unspeakable things to his downstairs situation, shoves a spoon where the sun don't shine, completely takes out his left eye, nearly severs an artery, pulls off his fingernails, and completely cuts off his right arm. Nice. Somehow though, the Governor actually survives this, leading to an incredibly savage attack on the prison where the group of survivors are staying. Now during this attack, being completely bloodthirsty, he forces members of his community to attack, which results in the horrible passing of Lori and Judith. At which point, the Governor's own people turn on him, blasting through the back of his head and kicking him into a horde of zombies like that. Just like that.
Number 3, Devil's Due. One of the most haunting moments from the Dark Ride series still comes from its very first issue for me. This comic has stuck with me mentally from the beginning, and this moment is a big part of the reason I think why that happened. In the very first issue, we meet our seeming protagonist for the series, Owen Seasons. However, before the issue is even fully over, Owen's fate is sealed and he is seemingly killed. Initially, I simply thought he was going to have some kind of horrific and mysterious experience, go missing for a while, but he would return, maybe changed, but no, he literally just ends up being forced onto a ride known as Devil's Due and is roasted to a crisp while being torn limb from limb by what I can only describe as demon claws and teeth. Following this, it's later suggested that Owen is haunting the park and that his corpse is used as adornment for the ride. The latter is actually revealed when his sister, an investigative journalist, infiltrates the park in search of him and finds his corpse while exploring after hours.
Coming in at number 2, it's the Guardians of the Globe. One of the best moments in Invincible, or the worst I guess, both in the comic and the show, happens really early on. After becoming comfortable with the good guys in the story, mainly Mark Grayson and his family, including his dad Omni-Man, the strongest superhero on Earth, we pick up in issue 7, or in the final moments of episode 1 of the show, being introduced to each member of Earth's premier superhero team, the Guardians of the Globe. War Woman, Darkwing, Red Rush, Aquarius, Martian Man, Green Ghost, and the Immortal were all given backstories and character development, getting you into this powerful group of heroes, and in a fraction of that time, you watch them get absolutely decimated by Omni-Man himself. In the comics, this is carried out over 2 pages. We see eyes popped out, necks turned completely around, heads removed from shoulders, and torsos turned into Swiss cheese. But in the show, this plays out in under 3 minutes. Red Rush gets his head crushed. That's a good rhyme. Darkwing is splattered on the floor, Green Ghost loses their face and is used as a shield, Aquarius gets obliterated, War Woman gets her head spun around, Martian Man has his heart removed, and the Immortal becomes a head shorter.
Number 1. Munch Munch Munch. This fearsome fate caused some of the most recoiling I've done in some time during a read-through of a comic. We are talking about when YouTuber Theo got in a little too deep when it came to his investigation into the going-ons and recent tragedy at Devilland. In issue number 4 of Dark Ride, Theo is drawn in by a mysterious text message promising to reveal the secrets of Devil's Land and the Dante family who created it. He heads over for what he hopes will be an insightful meeting, but instead gets his head literally munched by one of the suits.
Number 10. Velocity. Velocity, as her name kind of implies, has the ability of super speed. Although a pretty basic power, it is nonetheless incredibly useful. Imagine receiving a punch from someone who's moving near Mach 13. You're done. You ain't coming back. They punch you in the jaw? Sorry, you no longer have a jaw anymore. That's just how it goes. Velocity has been clocked at running at speeds of Mach 13, and she is actually holding back because she's afraid if she runs any faster, she could destroy the Earth. And she likely could. Without something like DC's Speed Force to bend the laws of physics, moving at such extreme speeds at ground level could do terrible things to the Earth's atmosphere, as well as possibly incinerating anything on or near her path. Just think about that for like a little bit. Cyberdata, the group that gave Karen Taylor the cybernetic enhancements that turned her into Velocity and let her move at her crazy speed, also implanted Kevlar under her skin to prevent extreme damage from running at those speeds. I don't know, I feel like you gotta do a little bit more than that, but hey, I just work here. She also has a cybernetic device called the Brain Box that lets her process information at hyper speeds, which is something that at least won't destroy the planet. Number 9. Savage Dragon. The Savage Dragon is one of Image Comics' most popular and long-lasting characters, and he has been around since his debut as just Dragon in Graphic Fantasy number 1 in June of 1982. Basically, the Savage Dragon woke up butt naked and with no memory in a burning field. He was a giant green man with a big old fin on top of his head and super ripped like most heroes are. Now, what he didn't know at the time was that he was actually an alien conqueror named Kerr who originally came to Earth to conquer it, but was betrayed by 2 scientists. He was an enhanced member of the alien race called the Krillin, or Krylin, and his enhanced Krylin/Krillin physiology gave him superhuman strength, agility, and stamina, healing abilities, and telepathic resistance. Now, one of my favorite parts about this hero is that instead of joining a superhero team and being a typical hero, the Dragon actually wound up being a member of the Chicago Police Department and helping with their super freak problem. I think it's kinda cool to ground a character like that, but the nature of his powers still leave him near the top of the list. Number 8. Mighty Man. Different from most of the heroes on this list, Mighty Man is less of a person and more of a power that is passed on from person to person. Mighty Man is a tall, handsome, and ruggedly built blonde man, even when that is definitely not what his host is. So for example, the current Mighty Man is actually a woman named Anne Samantha Stevens, who becomes Mighty Man whenever she taps her wrists together. The power was passed on to her from the previous host Robert Bergman, who fought in World War II. When she's not a superhero, she's actually helping out other superheroes, such as being the nurse that helped the Savage Dragon recover when he was first found with no memory out in that burning field. The Mighty Man powers include flight, invulnerability, leadership, magic, stamina, super speed, and super strength. And it's honestly really easy to draw parallels between him and Shazam, and even the original Thor, who used to transform from Donald Blake. Number 7. Pit. The unfortunate thing about indie comics is that the 2 big guys, Marvel and DC, have done a lot of stuff already. So a lot of characters will be spins on originals, but honestly, sometimes they are way cooler. Pit is basically inspired by the Incredible Hulk, but I don't want that to undermine how cool he is. The giant ball of hulking muscle and rage is a combination of human DNA mixed with genetic material from a race known as the Creed. Pit escaped from the laboratory where he was being studied, but was captured and trained to be an assassin, so that sets him apart already. While on a mission though, a child's consciousness was melded with Pit's, and after this merger, he fled to Earth and found a young boy who is technically his genetic relative. Pit is as crazy strong as he seems to look, and I don't know if you saw the super scary claws, but he has super scary claws, so that's kind of freaky. He also has a degree of telepathy and uses it to make himself an incredible tracker, establishing a mental link with whoever he's tracking, making him able to track them from the other side of the world. He also has emotional control, meaning he can unbalance other people's emotions in order to make them commit errors while fighting. And I don't know why I've never heard of another character doing that before. That's actually really cool. Whereas the Hulk gets stronger the madder he gets, Pitt uses pain as a stimulant, making him even more of an aggressive fighter and a D-lifer. Number 6, Mr. Majestic. Jim Lee, who created this character, said he wanted to explore a character who had Superman's powers but was not afraid to use them, which resulted in the character of Lord Magistros, aka Mr. Majestic. He was an alien from the planet of Kara and was their High Lord, and a warlord who felt that he could be judge and jury. So Mr. Majestic has all the powers the Man of Steel has, like super speed, strength, invulnerability, energy projection from his eyes, and all that good super stuff, plus telekinesis and telepathy, except he is essentially extremely brutal and militant. He is not afraid to use his power in the slightest, but it's still aligned to the side of good, for the most part, which does step him apart from other characters like him. He would eventually become the leader of the Wildcats for a time, and when on Earth, he would imprison criminals without a trial, and while he eased up somewhat on his ways, he never truly reverted or became completely good. There's actually an instance where he winds up in Metropolis, and him and Superman talk about their different methods, which is actually pretty cool. Number 5, Void. Void's real name was Adriana Tereshkova, a Russian cosmonaut who, while on a space mission, had her craft destroyed by this crazy silver space orb that bonded with her. The orb was part of an entity named Omnia, who had passed on but had formed herself into several of these different colored energy orbs that found their way to various hosts. Void was basically, well, a void. During a battle, her face is actually literally knocked off of her body, revealing that there's nothing but energy inside of her metal shell body. One of her more useful powers was teleportation, being able to transport her teammates anywhere on Earth. She also has clairvoyance, precognition, being able to see the future, astral projection, chronokinesis, telekinesis, and energy manipulation. The greatest of those abilities was being able to see fragments of what the future held, a very useful ability that helped her and her team, the Wildcats, out on multiple occasions. Void at one point met the Valiant Comics character Solar, and when the two became lovers, their universes merged in a crossover event called Deathmate. So she can also merge universes together, which is, I mean, I'd say that's a pretty powerful ability. Number 4, Angelus. Angelus is an immortal being who's been worshipped by people as early as the Incan Empire back in the 15th century. Her counterpart, or opposite, is the Darkness, an evil entity that has existed since the beginning of time. Now, both entities require human vessels, but the Darkness follows the bloodlines of violent people such as criminals, whereas Angelus can choose whoever she wants. Angelus has the powers of light on her side and imbues in her human host strength, speed, stamina, flight, resistance to injury from earthly weapons, and the ability to create objects of pure light. On top of that, any host of Angelus can recall the memories of previous hosts, which is an extremely useful ability if you really think about it. Angelus does have a bit of a weakness though. To maintain a presence in the body she's occupying, the host body must be in light. Being in complete darkness can drain Angelus and cause death to the host, but Angelus would be fine, so I mean, not the worst of weaknesses, really. Number 3, Invincible. Now, I was going to choose Omni-Man for this top spot, but given how many Superman but brutal characters there are out there and how boring that is now, I wanted to talk about Mark Grayson himself. Mark is a member of the race known as the Viltrumites, which are a group of extremely powerful aliens who, due to their diminished numbers, go solo out into the universe to conquer planets for their empire. Mark's dad, Omni-Man, is the most powerful superhero on Earth, until one day he reveals his true Viltrumite mission and does battle with his son, who convinces him to the error of his ways. Now, Viltrumites are basically immortal. They age at an extremely slow rate, which slows down even further as they mature, eventually stopping altogether. They also get stronger and stronger with age, and every time they are defeated or gravely hurt in combat, they will heal, very quickly I might add, to be even more stronger than they were before. Viltrumites can also fly and survive the vacuum of space. Mark, his dad, and another Viltrumite flew through the core of a planet, completely destroying it, and Mark himself has defeated people much more powerful than him with sheer willpower and determination. He eventually becomes a galactic peacekeeper, bringing the whole universe to a state of complete peace and prosperity. He's actually a really great dude. Number 2. Supreme. Another Superman-like character. Yay! Don't hate me, please. Please. Supreme is known as a prime hero in his universe, meaning he is basically Superman, but more of an homage to the character. The origin of how Ethan Crane gained his powers is a little confusing. There have been 2 main writers, with the second one, Alan Moore, making him a heroic character, having him exposed to supremium radiation, turning his hair white and giving him flight, incredible strength, near invulnerability, super senses, the ability to project heat beams from his eyes, and speed supreme when he was 5 years old. He fought in World War II, then decided to go off-world and experience almost half a century of space adventures. When he returned to Earth, he was confronted by the Youngblood team, who didn't believe he was who he said he was. He's able to defeat their strongest character, Die Hard, within seconds, and that kinda changes their minds. But now, Supreme has to deal with a very different time period. So in a way, he's almost like Captain America 2, which is kind of a cool combo to have. And number 1, it's Spawn. Todd McFarlane created the character Spawn in May 1992, and this character popped off, selling an epic 1.7 million copies, and he is definitely one of the characters that put Image Comics on the map, and that's an impressive superpower indeed. Spawn tells the story of Al Simmons, a Marine who died in the line of duty and makes a deal with the devil, or more specifically, Male Bolgia, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, to come back to life to once again be with his wife Wanda. Simmons returned to the land of the living but was bonded to an organic supersuit that had an extremely long list of powers of its own. Some of his powers include flight, invisibility, phasing, healing factor, shapeshifting, necromancy, superhuman endurance, reflexes, agility, senses and stamina, telekinesis, telepathy, memory manipulation, time manipulation, transmutation, cosmic awareness, chlorokinesis, geokinesis, weather manipulation, hydrokinesis, and immortality as long as his head is intact. Oh, he also has this thing called the Black Dispersal, which allows Spawn to call upon creatures of darkness and sin who will attack beings of light, but who Spawn can also control. These creatures include wolves, bears, worms, and bats, which is kind of rude to all those animals. Spawn also has necroplasmic energy manipulation, which basically equates to vast magical powers, which used to have a limit of 9,999 uses, but were only limited by his imagination. He's been able to conjure up a car key, materialize a box of fine wine for his friends, and even resurrect the dead at the cost of his necrometer. Spawn initially starts out in the shadows, fighting street criminals, but eventually takes the fight back to Male Bolgia, kills him, and becomes the king of hell.